Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today I am continuing the Bad Teachers State-Specific series. Today I'm taking you to North Carolina, home of Michael Jordan, by the way, and we're going to start in Moxville, North Carolina for this one, at Davie High School, when on November 29th of 2016, and I want you to imagine this. A basketball game ends, the gym lights are still on, and parents are filing out. And in the parking lot, some students notice something that stops them cold in their tracks when they see their teacher, Jessica Welch Greene, a very attractive brunette, 27 years old, absolutely locked in a passionate kiss with a 17-year-old male student. Not a hug, not a friendly peck, though that, of course, would not be any more appropriate, but a full-on open-mouth kiss right there in public. Now, this single moment would crack open one of the most disturbing teacher-student sex cases in North Carolina history. So let's get into it, and I'm going to start in 1989 in Forsyth County, North Carolina, where Jessica Greene was born. She grew up in a very stable, supportive, church-going family, and growing up, she seemed like the all-American girl. She was especially great with kids during her teenage years. She was a babysitter. She was even a nanny for several people, and she gained a reputation for being responsible and trustworthy, a girl that was going places. Now, after high school, she would attend and graduate from Salem College. This is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and she was smart, 3.8 GPA upon her graduation. So in 2014, she gets married, and it's not what you would describe as a great marriage. She would say later in court records that the marriage would quickly become abusive. Her new husband had some pretty serious drug and alcohol issues and was both verbally and physically violent, she would allege. She said he would use her as a punching bag. He would call her ugly, stupid, and although she would keep this abuse secret from most people, she was going through it at home, according to her. Now, in 2015, she has a young daughter, and according to Jessica, she struggled pretty hard after her pregnancy with postpartum depression. She also would mismanage her diabetes. She would lose a bunch of weight. She would completely isolate herself from people and appeared very depressed. Now, by 2016, things would start looking up for her. She would land a job as an English teacher at Davie High School. And once she started there, she would quickly become one of the most popular teachers at that school. The students absolutely loved her, and her teaching style was very unique. She was very highly regarded from the staff as well. On paper, Jessica seemed like the perfect teacher that every parent would dream of. So everything explodes in November of 2016. Now, according to court documents, this is when the inappropriate contact starts. A 17-year-old boy, which I'm going to refer to as Student A, who was in Jessica's English class. They start texting, and texting a lot. And those texts quickly turn sexual, which would be proven later with screenshots. Then a physical relationship starts. The investigation would later document at least 3 separate acts of full-on intercourse between the 27-year-old teacher and the 17-year-old student. These instances would occur on school property, in her car, and she would also later admit to performing oral sex on this student at least twice. So, as I told you at the start of this one, November 29th, 2016 would change everything for her when multiple students would catch her and this student making out in that basketball parking lot. And those students would immediately report what they saw to the school, the SRO, or school resource officer. Now, when the students reported this, they also reported that this 17-year-old teen had been bragging to them that he and Greene were in a sexual relationship and had actually gone on dates together, both dinner dates and movie dates. They also told that SRO that the teen had been dating this teacher for only a couple of weeks, but had told these other students that he had sex with Jessica in her vehicle in the driveway of a house that was actually for sale. He had also told these other students that after graduation, they planned to be together and get married. So, of course, the SRO, he reports all of this to the principal, and an investigation officially starts on December 2nd of 2016. In that very same day, English teacher Jessica Greene is suspended from teaching. Now, the Davie County Sheriff's Office, they move pretty fast. They start interviewing this 17-year-old student. The student admits to this relationship. He confirmed everything the other students had already told the SRO of that school. And they also seize his phone, which contained just a ton of evidence, text messages, pictures, etc. So now it was time to talk to Jessica Greene. And initially, she denies intercourse with this student, but she does admit to performing oral sex on the student on 2 occasions, though she insisted it never happened on campus, although evidence police had recovered had said otherwise. So it is on December 13th of 2016 that 27-year-old Jessica Welch Greene is arrested and charged with 3 counts of sexual activity with a student. And it's important to note that although the consent age in North Carolina is 16, the fact that she is a teacher and therefore a person of authority, like a police officer, or really anybody else in a position of authority over such a young person, it's what opened the door to these charges. So it didn't matter that he was consenting to all of this. She goes to jail, she bonds out on a $15,000 bond, and it's not long before the news is just all over the state. Then all over the country on this one. Everybody picks it up. So fast forward to September 25th of 2017, and Jessica Greene, who is by this time 28, she shows up to a hearing. And she does what they all do. She took a plea deal. In her attorney's statement to the judge, he describes his client as very depressed, very unhappy, and very unlikely to reoffend. She then pleads no contest to the charges, and the judge sentences her to 2 years in prison. But he suspends that entire sentence. She gets 36 months probation, and she must register as a sex offender for 30 years. Now, one interesting aspect of her sentence was that she would also have to consent to warrantless searches of her phone and computer devices for life. I'm not saying that's not deserving, but that's interesting. It's the first time I've seen that. I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest. For the rest of her life, someone from the court or a police officer can just show up at her house and say, "Let me see your phone." And she's got to turn it over right there and let them search it. She was also under a no contact order with anyone under the age of 18 outside of her daughter. And that's pretty common when you get sentenced in these cases. But I mean, let's be honest, she got off pretty easy. But this story ain't over yet for Jessica Greene, because in 2018 and 2019, her probation officer caught her dropping her daughter off at a local dance studio, and that violated the no contact under 18 order because there were a lot of kids there under the age of 18. But even worse, it's discovered that Jessica had created 16 social media accounts under aliases that she never reported to her probation officer, as required, with some accounts being described as promiscuous activity. I don't know if that's an OnlyFans or something, but it doesn't really specify. I'm speculating there. This prompted the district attorney to say she was not taking her probation seriously. So in 2020, she ends up back in front of a judge and she gets sentenced to 3 months in jail for those violations. So that's her story. In October 2019, high-ranking Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office Deputy Dennis Perkins and his wife Cynthia were arrested and subsequently convicted of over 150 sex crimes involving minors. During the investigation into these crimes, an 18-minute video surfaced. This video would show Dennis Perkins and another woman initially thought to be Cynthia performing sex acts on a seemingly unconscious, unidentified female. Further investigation would reveal that the female performing those sex acts was a popular Livingston Parish realtor by the name of Melanie Curtin. In 2020, Curtin was arrested, and in December of 2021, Curtin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for aggravated rape, plus 5 years for video voyeurism. However, in 2023, that case was thrown out after an appeals court ruled that not only did the evidence admitted unfairly prejudice Melanie Curtin, but also ruled that evidence not allowed in during that trial prevented Curtin from mounting a proper defense. Despite this ruling, the Louisiana Attorney General's office continued to pursue the case under reduced charges of third-degree rape and video voyeurism. On March 17, 2026, after a retrial on those reduced charges, Curtin was found not guilty unanimously by a 12-person jury. What happened in this case? How can a person go from being unanimously convicted to life in prison to being found not guilty just 3 years later unanimously by a jury in the same community? In this series, I will bring you inside the courtroom and cover the case exactly how it was presented in court. I'll give you the backstory of what led up to the initial investigation into Melanie Curtin and let you decide guilt or innocence. This is 18 Minutes, The Trials of Melanie Curtin, Unexposed Investigates podcast docuseries. We'll move on to the next one, and that brings me to Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I'm going to tell you about a 25-year-old smart local teacher who threw it all away when she got arrested for having sex with 3 male students, 2 17-year-olds and a 16-year-old, all off campus. Her name was Erin McAuliffe, and she was born and raised in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And Rocky Mount, when I researched it, I was pretty surprised. It's a rather large city, 60,000 residents. So Erin fits right in there. She graduates from high school in 2010. Very popular, very pretty. In college, she is your typical sorority girl. She's known as extremely smart. She even joined the math club in college, one of my weakest subjects. And to those that knew her, she was very straight-laced, or at least she appeared to be. So she graduates in math. That was her major, and she gets her teaching credentials in August of 2016, just 9 months before everything I'm about to tell you about took place. She lands a job at Rocky Mount Prep School, which is a charter school in what's known as Nash County, and she's teaching high school math. And at this point, she is 24 years old, very well liked, very trusted, considered a professional, the whole nine. Nobody saw what was coming, or did they? We'll never know, because that school shut their doors pretty quickly after this incident. So Rocky Mountain Prep was a nice little charter school. A guy named Todd Popkin was the head of that school at the time, and he actually hired Erin in August of 2016. Now, by May 4th of 2017, she was out of a job. The very next day, school administrators, they contact police, and they let them know a complaint came in regarding inappropriate relationships with Erin McAuliffe and some students, plural. Police start investigating, and they interview faculty, they interview a whole bunch of students, and what they discover is these allegations involved 3 male students who were all students at Rocky Mountain Prep. And as I said, 2 of those are 17-year-olds. One of those was a 16-year-old. Now, every single one of these encounters occurred off campus, from what I understand. And that's actually more of a key point than you may think. She wasn't dumb enough to do any of these acts on campus, which meant, likely, she knew what she was doing was illegal. That would make it pretty hard for her to hide behind the consent age was 16, and I thought because they were 16, if they consented to having sex, there was nothing wrong with that. I didn't know that I was a teacher and that I could not engage in sex with these people. She can't use that defense because she was intentionally doing this off campus. She knew her role as a teacher made it illegal. So by June 8th of 2017, she gets formally charged. She's arrested. She posted a $20,000 bond on 3 felony counts of sex activities with students. Now, in the first case, I told you news exploded. But in this case, it was like an atom bomb going off. TMZ picked it up, the Daily Mail, and it was primarily because of her looks. The chick was good looking. All the headlines read, "Hot math teacher gets busted for sleeping with 3 students." Now, this time, Erin McAuliffe is 25 years old. So she appears in court, and she walks in, and she's wearing sunglasses. She's covering her face. She didn't have anything to say to the media, and she does her plea, which is obviously not guilty at that point. Now, this case literally drags through the system for years. When I tell you none of the details outside of the arrest came out, that is the facts of it. There was no trial in this one. She pleaded, just like they all do, on October 29th of 2018 to just 1 count of taking indecent liberties with a student. No prison time. She gets 18 months of probation. And this is a case, y'all, with 3 separate victims. Wrap your head around that. Again, what would have happened if that would have been a male teacher and he had screwed 3 underage kids? It is unreal to me. But again, North Carolina, no information to pull from.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Let's go to our last bad teacher for today. And I'm going to tell you about the story of a teacher who had every advantage: a steady job, kids that looked up to her, you name it, threw it all away for a student that was, in this case, 15 years or younger. And the reason I say it like that is the charges tell me that, but no specific age is ever put out there. Man, North Carolina locks these things down almost to a negative extent, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this teacher's name is Elizabeth Bailey, and in 2022, she was arrested for statutory rape. That's how we know 15 years or younger. But here's what makes her case really different from prior cases we have covered on bad teachers. In her case, even after she gets arrested, she keeps right on seeing this kid 9 different times at her own house. Then, even more shocking details come out in this case, and I'll tell you about those when I get to them, but let's get into it. She was born in 1986, Elizabeth Bailey, and by the time all this came out, she was 36 years old, and she was living in Statesville, North Carolina, which is a small town about 40 miles north of Charlotte. Now, Elizabeth was not new to teaching either. She was a vet. She had over 12 years of teaching experience. Knew better, right? Eventually, she landed a job as a science teacher at Northview Academy, and she worked her way up the ranks, first as a teaching assistant. Then she started working with kids with special needs. Eventually, she ends up the science teacher. Now, Northview was not a typical school. It was an alternative school. It was for kids who had got kicked out of regular school. There aren't your straight A honor roll students here at this school. And it was Elizabeth Bailey's job to get them on the right track. And you're seeing what she's doing here. Now, all seemed fine with Elizabeth Bailey until July 22nd of 2022, when somebody, we still don't know who, could have been a student, could have been another teacher, could have been a parent, but someone tips the school off to the fact that Miss Bailey is having an inappropriate relationship with one of her students. And detectives, they start digging. They talk to staff. They talk to students. And within mere days of doing this, they already have enough evidence to make an arrest. So on August 1st of 2022, that arrest happens. And Miss Bailey is charged with 3 felonies, including statutory rape, indecent liberties with a minor, and sexual activity with a minor. And although the age of this kid has never been released, we do know the kid, as I told you, was at the most 15 years old. Could have been younger. So she makes a $75,000 bond. She goes home with an ankle monitor after her arrest. And then, just 8 days later, on August 8th of 2022, more charges, including contributing to the delinquency of a minor, are placed against her, and they pick her back up. So they must have figured out, as part of this investigation, that at some point she was giving this kid beer or drugs or something. So she goes back to jail, she bails out again, and by September of 2022, police are shocked when it's discovered that after her arrest, when she was under a no-contact order with this kid, Miss Bailey had met with the boy 9 more times. Now, this is between her August 1st arrest and September 2nd of that year. 9 times in just 1 month. And what do you think they were doing inside of that house, right? They hit her with 27 additional charges, and her bond jumps to $800,000. She heads back to jail. And with an $800,000 bond, you would think she's going to stay there. But shockingly, somehow she manages to make that $800,000 bond. So think about this. She's arrested. She totally ignores her bond conditions, sees this kid 9 more times in a month. I don't consider that a screw up. I consider that a pattern. And sadly, that pattern would continue further, if you can believe that, when over 6 months later, one of those you can't make this shit up situations happens. On the afternoon of May 13th of 2023, she gets into an auto accident. So police show up, and Miss Bailey, she appears like she had been drinking. But when police show up, she was sitting in the front passenger seat. No one else is there. Now, witnesses to the crash confirm she, in fact, had not been driving. As a matter of fact, the witnesses say the driver and a rear passenger in that vehicle fled from the scene after the accident. So get this. The very next day, police locate the 2 people who fled that scene. Both were minors, and the one driving was the same freaking kid she had been ordered to stay away from. So again, she's put into jail. But hold on to your ass here. She bonds out again. I mean, how do you not earn a no bond in this instance? It is absolutely nuts to me. So from here, the case drags on, and in the strangest case I have come across in quite a while, there is no record of her conviction. And the only way I knew that she was convicted was that her teaching license was revoked, and in that revocation, it mentioned due to a conviction for sexual exploitation of a child. And that's frustrating. I understand you have to protect minor victims. I don't need to know their names, but the situations are important. Why? Because a parent can sit down their kid and go over what happened in a certain situation and explain to them, if you're ever in this situation, these are the possible things that can happen. I know it sounds weird. No one wants to have that conversation with their kids, but you have to these days. You absolutely have to. And when you, I don't want to use the word hide, but when you protect cases to this extent, it really does a disservice to the public. I'm disappointed in North Carolina. On my bad teacher's consequence scale, of course, every week I rate the 3 to 4 cases that I cover, and I give them a grade A through F on what I call my bad teacher's consequence scale. And I want to congratulate North Carolina. You get a big fat F on the bad teacher's consequence scale for several reasons. One, at least from the cases that I covered here, your consequences are absolute bullshit. How the hell did that last teacher I told you about get out of jail 4 times and continue to screw up? How is it that none of these teachers got any jail time? I don't know if the final teacher I covered did or didn't, because they don't put it. There's not even news reports on it. I would say the news agencies in North Carolina need to tighten up as well. And y'all need to get the information. It's just crazy. Do better, North Carolina. It's important. But there you have it. And before I get out of here today, if you're a member of the Patreon page, I posted a piece of artwork, if you will, of a series I have upcoming. I've been a little bit quiet on Patreon the last 2 weeks and really on the Facebook the last 2 weeks. And that's because I've been inside of a trial, a very high profile trial right here in my community. It is finally wrapped up. and I'm dropping a docuseries on this. Not exactly sure when I'm going to drop it because I'm going to record all of these episodes as part of this series prior to actually starting it. It'll all be done by that point. The series is titled 18 Minutes, The Trials of Melanie Curtin, and it's an Exposed Investigates podcast docuseries. It'll be heading your way. So I hope you all look forward to that. And again, check out the Patreon for commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes. I got one coming your way, Patreon members. Finally, I have broken out of that trial, and so I'm back on track with that. Bonus episode coming soon. I'm also going to start getting things ready. I'm just waiting on my order of my quarterly merch for my top-tier Patreon members. I got to start sending that out on the 1st of April. So check out the Patreon, patreon.com/exposed podcast files if you'd like to support the show and get some pretty amazing perks. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.